this dadgum thing works.
Video
So, of course,
recording.
as usual, we're going to need to check our Facebook notifications. I had a little trouble, not trouble with the software schedule, it was actually trouble with Facebook. So, you were searching Twitter for eating crow? What's that about?
Okay, hang on. Hang on. Hang on. I'm fixing to show you. I'm
Well,
fixing to show you.
we're live. You like got to clue everybody in while you're going, and people are listening to the podcast now. We're starting to get a pretty good number of listeners on the podcast. I mean, for not really promoting or advertising it that much.
Well, crap. Okay, here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. I'm sorry. Let me share it. I'm gonna put it in the Google Drive here real quick for you. I am creating content for all of you out there in social media land.
This can be dangerous.
This could be dangerous, but this all right.
Not trouble with the software. Hey,
It
we're
should
live.
be there. It should be there. It should be there.
Okay, so what do I need to do? Share your screen, or is it in the folder, or what?
Dadgummit, it's not there yet. Okay. So we were talking about it. I don't think it populated. I'll do it again here in a second. But
Okay.
we were talking about, so where are all of the mask Nazis and the jab Nazis?
Well,
Where they
wait.
where are they
Before you
at?
start calling names and labeling people, be careful because we're trying not to get booted from any of the social media platforms tonight.
Oh, wait a minute. That's right. You're saying that censorship is real and that the government and or other interests may seek to have us removed, right? Because we say
Well,
something that they don't like or we say something that's true.
I've been on the bandwagon. If I can talk tonight, I've been on the bandwagon. I'm having difficulty talking. I've been on the bandwagon before that it's not censorship per se when a private company chooses to author content because there are other platforms we can go to. But as we have learned recently, um, it actually is government censorship when, the
So,
FBI is
so
involved.
what you're saying is when Donald Trump was saying that the COVID, whatever you want to call it, the China virus, as he said,
China. Yeah.
you're telling me that because that was false stuff, it should have been censored?
Well, as it turns out, it's not necessarily false. Have you seen the
Oh,
news?
but wait a minute. The mass Nazis, the jab Nazis, everybody was
Well,
going after Donald Trump back then. Every mainstream media was saying, "Oh, he's a nut job. He's a whack job." And everybody that listens to him, you're a whack job too. And if you don't wear your mask, and if you don't get the jab, you're a menace to society. You should be put into a concentration camp and frog marched away from society. You shouldn't even be able to interact. Remember all
well,
that? Remember
I
all
do.
that crap?
I do remember it, but I like to be consistent too, so I still maintain that it's not censorship if, this is a big if, and that's a dangerous word, if Twitter or Facebook or YouTube decide that they
So,
don't want that, let me finish, that they don't want that on their platform. However, again, as we have learned, number one, it does appear that the virus now, according to the Department of Energy and the FBI, has a possibility of coming from a Wuhan lab. So, the China virus was correct. And that the FBI itself, had basically offices in Twitter and helping to censor. And who knows, maybe with
oh,
Facebook and YouTube too. So that, to me, would absolutely qualify as censorship.
oh, so all those people that were saying that, hey, y'all are all crazy, or as I like to say, you're a bunch of jackwagons because it came from China and you're saying it didn't, and you're saying we're all crazy. You mean the conspiracy theorists? We may have got it right, and the media
Maybe
and
so.
the government and everybody else was lying to you. So, okay, I'm putting the cart before the horse here. But
Mm-hmm.
here's my thing. I was struggling right here before the start to pull up, and let me get over here. This technology thing. Stop sharing. We'll share another screen. Where is it at?
Yeah,
Let me
I got to
share
try to
another
keep up.
screen, man. And some content. Oh yeah, there we go, baby. Um,
All right, let me see if I can share Duke's
so
screen. Let's see if I can get over
here's the
there.
$1 million question for me. Where
Hmm.
are all those people, the mask Nazis, the jab Nazis, and the ones that call Donald Trump crazy and all the rest of us whack jobs? Because, we were saying, hey, this is all a bunch of crap and everybody needs to take a breath and you need to look at all the stuff a little closer and we're ridiculed and all that. So, all of the folks that were wrong, where are they at? Are they
Well,
eating their crows? Why are they not stepping forward to the plate and saying, "You know what? I was wrong." Where
well,
are they
I don't
at?
know. But speaking of dinner plates with birds on them, that's an interesting segue. Although it's going to be coming up after we run our countdown and our ads. Um, well, crows and chickens are similar things, and so we've got kind of a conspiracy here inside the city limits. We're going to have a guest on in a little bit. That's pretty interesting, and there will be a little eating crow or eating chickens there, as the case may be, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we're going to probably touch on the censorship thing again. One of our favorite guests, who's been on the show in the past, who's provided us with a very informative plethora of information. See there, I'm using some of them Halton words there.
Yeah, yeah.
People in Halton are saying, "What did he say?" Anyway, she's going to probably tell us about that big lawsuit a lot of y'all heard about, with the AGs of Missouri and Louisiana, a little guy named Jeff Landry. Some of you may have heard of him. Anyway, she's going to talk about that a little bit because she had a role in that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And what else?
Well, and there's also, to quote Bobby Boucher from The Water Boy, a little high quality H2O workshop coming up Thursday that the city is supposed to stream. So,
Oh yeah, I got a
we
few
may have that to
questions.
talk about. And we'll definitely have to talk about that. Okay, let's go ahead and do our countdown, our intro, and when we come back, we'll ad lib for just a minute or two and go ahead and get into it and maybe have our first guest on. What do you say, Mr. Lowry?
Let's do it to it.
All right, here we go, folks. Y'all know the drill. We're going to do our countdown. It'll be about 2.5, 3 minutes. Grab you some popcorn, get you a good stiff drink, tag, text, share this out. Get everybody you can to watch it. You're not going to believe our interview in a few minutes. We've got two very interesting ones. And so we'll be back in a few minutes.
They feel helpless, they don't feel heard, they have nowhere to turn.
In all honesty, we try to lay low a little bit because of the fear that we would not be able to camp there.
And I titled it A Shot Across the Bow of the Good Old Boys.
Hello everybody. I don't think I've ever done a video before on here, but yeah, I wanted to tell y'all what frustrates me a little bit about permits.
The cockroach of the week is, drumroll please, Allie Feaster Smith.
We can't be apathetic about what's going on in our state. We have to all pull up our bootstraps and get on top of this. So you're right. There's a problem out there. I mean, and man, you can see it everywhere.
Well, look, we have allowed government to become our wherewithal to everything.
Well, I've not heard my name in stable or Baton Rouge in stable in the same sentence in a long time.
You're about to be killed by a Zamboni, or you're gonna die in 5 minutes!
This Bossier Watch live broadcast is brought to you by David B. Womack for all your contracting and construction needs. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting is an IWTP customized training provider with over 25 years of success to show for it. Call them for a free consultation today. Pelican Training and Consulting matches employers with 50-plus employees with training dollars. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go.
All right, I found another one, Rex. You got to share this one.
I'm looking at the little miniature thumbnail, so let me share out your screen again. I whenever I hit the trigger on that, I never know what's coming.
I mean, I failed us in the meme that I grabbed earlier, so I'm trying to recover here. There, hopefully that is more appropriate.
That is definitely hilarious. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the the real, I don't know, whatever we're going to talk about besides crows tonight and eating crow. Although I guess we still have a little bit more of that to talk about later.
We do. So, as you know, I got my gritty paws into this term limits thing in Bossier. I mean, at least that's a nasty rumor anyway. So, it's going good, collecting signatures, on track. And, hey, if anybody watching, if you support and agree with term limits, you need to get your signature on there. You can go to bossiertermlimits.com. That Rex, you built the website. Thank you very much. Well done.
Yeah.
And, if you live in the parish, go in and sign up. We need as many signatures as we can get. And if you live in the city, you can also go sign up and message us or email and let us know where you're at, because we have to have your original signature in the city. It's a little different, so let us know and we'll be on the way to you.
Yeah, and I'd also like to mention that those guys over there on that sidewalk doing that podcast did release an episode. I think it was, what is today? Tuesday, so it must have been yesterday or maybe Sunday night. Anyway, they did a little segment on the term limits as well, so we would encourage people to also go check out Shane, and I think his name is Keith. How can I not remember his name? Anyway, go check out his their podcast because they had a good segment on term limits as well. But back to your story. So you're out gathering signatures in a neighborhood, actually not too far from me. And what happened?
Well, an amazing thing, I mean, you see all kinds. I got to tell you, it's a blast. If you've never campaigned for any candidate or knocked on doors, going and meeting people, I mean, it's an amazing thing. And it's fun talking to people, getting to know people that you ain't never met before and having a little bit of conversation with them. And you just never know what you're going to learn, what you're going to find out, who you're going to meet. I mean, it's almost like there's a surprise at every door. And some doors, I got to tell you, probably this door over the years, I probably knocked on this door 2 or 3 times and for different things. But the hat I was wearing this time was the hat of term limits. And I was just going to different houses trying to get signatures for term limits. And so I go to this one house, and I met the folks that live at this house. They're right there in their front driveway. And boy, they were kind of looking at me funny when I rolled up in their driveway. And I think at that point is probably the best time to bring our guest in.
Okay, well, let me see if I can get Miss Diana in here. So let me hit this button, and we should have good audio. Miss Diana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, and we can hear you. That's always a good thing. How are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. So Duke was telling the story of walking up to the driveway, and y'all are looking at him kind of strangely. You want to pick up from there and maybe tell us what you thought was happening or what was going on?
Well, we were afraid that he was somebody from the city that was coming to get onto us about something else that we had done, because we had recently had an issue with trying to rescue a dog, which turned into having police having them come with weapons to get rid of our chickens, to putting drones over our house about a tent, and it
What?
was a
What?
mess.
What? Wait a minute. Did you mention city showing up with guns and a drone? I, I,
No,
I
wait a minute. The city is droning them. So, which came first,
Yeah.
the guns, the drones, or the tent? I don't know.
Uh, the guns came first when we tried to rescue a dog, and we called animal control, and when they came out to get the dog, they saw our chickens in our backyard, and they told us we had 3 days to get rid of them or they were going to dispose of them. And so 3 days later, they showed up and they had a gun with them. And I don't know. I don't know if they were going to shoot the chickens or what.
well, I'm Mr. Pro Gun Second Amendment and all that. I mean, a staunch supporter of it. However, did the city officials and I guess it was animal control or whoever it was, I don't know. But do they not know that it is illegal to discharge a weapon inside the city limits? Like there's a city ordinance against that.
Yeah. And also, my granddaughter, she's 11, she was the one that opened the door. So that's a little, awkward having her open the door and have somebody with a gun in his hand talking to her. But
So for everybody in Bossier City, what y'all need to understand is if you get caught with chickens in your backyard, you're liable to have jump out boys with guns show up at your door. And I mean, in your case, your 11-year-old daughter answered the door with grown men with guns over two freaking chickens.
two
I mean,
chickens, that's all we
is
had.
is this real? Did this really happen, or am I in bizarro world here, and am I in a nightmare here dreaming this?
Yeah, we don't even live in a neighborhood. We're at the end and we have just fields around us everywhere. And so they weren't, it's not even like, and we didn't have a rooster, so they weren't even causing issues, for people to complain about or anything.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back up though, and let's. All right, y'all found a stray dog or took in a stray dog. Is that correct?
Yeah, she kind of took to my granddaughter and she was sweet. And so I called around and none of the shelters said they had room for her or anything. So I finally called animal control and said, I need you to come get this dog because we can't keep her. And we already have 4 dogs, but we can't keep her. So somebody needs to take care of her. So they came out to get her. And like I said, that's when they saw the chicken coop because we had to open our gate to let her out.
And so, how did the drones come into play into this? Did they send a drone over your house?
Yeah. Um, the second time they came, when they came with their weapons, they looked into the backyard to make sure the chickens were no longer in the coop. And when they did, they saw a tent we had because we're acquainted with several people who have lost their homes through injury or things like that. And so we put up a tent and we were storing their stuff for them. And so they saw that tent. And so then it started another thing where they told us we had to remove the tent or pay a fine. And it was only after researching that my husband found out we could even ask for to pay for a permit.
Permit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the tent. But they didn't give us that as an option. They said remove it or pay a fine. But
Wait a minute. Did y'all have like a circus tent pitched in your backyard, or was it just like a an awning type tent? Or
it's just a temporary waterproof tent for
Rex,
storing stuff.
Diane, I'm gonna jump in here because I actually have seen this tent. Okay, Rex.
I'm
You know,
shocked
you,
at this.
you know how when you go to the beach and people will put those little four-legged tents like you
Right.
see or such at you buy at Home Depot or Walmart or even Sam's or whatever.
Yeah, the
That's
little
pretty much
pop-up tent, pop-up
that's like
canopies.
yeah, that's like what they got, and they're making them get a dadgum permit, and they're sending in drones on them.
Do you know
Yeah,
how many times I've put a pop-up tent in my yard, and I'm in the city limits too?
they told us we had to move it and they were going to check back. And then we got a notice from them that said they flew a drone overhead and they can still see that the tent is there. And so we better comply. And
You know what's interesting
but
about that? I'm just going to throw this out there for everybody watching, and we're at, I don't know, about 70 plus people watching and all that right now. So, um, I'm not going to reveal your address or anything like that on the show, but you live not too far from me, and we are at the edge of the Barksdale radius, which is a no fly zone for drones. And to be able to legally fly inside that area, you have to get the approval of air traffic control at Barksdale. Now, I'm not saying that they flew the drone illegally inside of Barksdale's airspace, but I'm trying to think of where that, because it actually clipped the no fly zone actually clips the back part of my yard. I wonder if they flew the drone
hmm,
illegally. I'm not saying they did, but that would be an interesting thing to pursue or to look into.
yeah, could
This,
be.
this story just amazes me. I
Well,
literally, I didn't really believe Duke at first, and after listening to you, I'm just in complete amazement about this.
Rex, our good friend anonymous Mark Smith says, "Do you live in the city limits?" Yes, Mark, she does, and he says zoning prohibits livestock. Why is this news, Mark? When is it news that armed city officials show up at a doorstep to enforce a no chicken, you know, pen in your yard? Two chickens. Does it really call for armed people to show up at somebody's doorstep? I mean,
Right.
is that what we have devolved to in Bossier City? And a freaking tent in somebody's backyard? Mark Smith, are you okay with a drone peeking into your windows in your backyard to see what's going on up in your camp and determining whether or not what's going on in your camp is appropriate or not? I'm wondering if you'd be okay with them checking your underwear to make sure that you're not wearing some underwear that says, China virus. How about that one, Mark Smith?
Well, I'm now in defense of drone pilots. I don't know who the city's drone pilot is or was, but it is perfectly legal for me to fly the drone over your house and take pictures. It is. All right. Because once the drone leaves the ground, assuming that it's outside, not in a contained building, it's under the purview of the FAA. So it's completely legal for the city to do that as long as they weren't in a no fly zone, for instance, Barksdale's. Now, it is not legal because of privacy laws for me to, for instance, hover around your upstairs window when you're in the bathroom or something like that. I can't hover my drone there. Just like it's the same thing as
But
if I
Rex,
can
Rex,
if I can look at your house and see it publicly. I can also do that from the air, but I can't sit there and be a voyeur. So I want to make sure that we're clear about that.
okay, no, but Rex, if they showed up, animal control, we're assuming animal control showed up to pick up a dog, they saw chickens and determined that this was a violation. Isn't that reasonable suspicion of breaking the law, which enables them to kind of go as far as they want to go? Couldn't they hover
Well,
that drone right down to the window of her house to look inside to see if she's got a house full of chickens?
uh,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that we're getting borderline on that, absolutely. So let me ask you this, Miss Diane. What, what was the end result of all this? What did y'all get rid of the chickens or get rid of the dog or what
Yeah.
what happened to all this?
They took the dog and we got rid of the chickens and uh, we paid the permit to have the tent. And um, then we also got a talking to because we let this young man have garage sales out of our driveway, and we were told that we were only allowed to have two a year. And so they were going to fine us if we had another garage sale too, which uh, that was, I never knew that before, but
Okay,
apparently.
somebody don't tell my wife that. She hadn't done one in a while, but she used to have several garage sales a year.
I
Does anybody
people
watch?
around here people around here have them all the time in the same house. It's just
Well,
pettiness
it
that we felt like we were being kind of picked on just because we were in their heads, you know. They were familiar with us, so they were just going to keep hitting us. I don't know.
That's crazy. Y'all called the city out of assistance, and you ended up getting fined, having to get rid of your chickens, and having to move or take down or whatever your pop-up canopy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I had something to say about the drone in the backyard. To me, it seems like if they can just look in your backyard, that's part of your property. So isn't that like searching without a warrant? If they can just
Well,
go take pictures of your backyard?
now full disclosure, I don't know if they see certain things, if they can act upon that in a law enforcement capacity. I'm no lawyer, so I don't know what the law on that is. But I do know, as far as privacy as a drone pilot, as far as privacy and all that, it's perfectly legal for me in there. It's no different than a helicopter
Hmm.
can fly over, literally. Now,
Okay.
again, from privacy for privacy concerns, they can't. Again, if you were sunbathing in your backyard or something like that in a bathing suit or a bikini, they can't hover over, and do get close to voyeurism or something like that. But it is absolutely legal to fly the drone over. Now, whether they can act on, if they see you have two chickens back there in a pop-up canopy, whether they can
Hmm.
act on that and get away with it in court, I don't know. Very interesting.
Well, Miss Diana, I'm sorry that it seems like you have been targeted by the city. I hate to hear that, and thank you for being a citizen to help out your neighbors and take care of that stray and put the tent up for the people who needed it in your yard. All I can say is thank you, and I apologize that you've gotten the grief that you've gotten.
Thank you.
Let me ask you one more
Thanks for
last.
letting me say my piece.
Let me ask you one more last question. Did you reach out to your city councilman or anybody like that, or how long ago was all this?
It was like it was right before Christmas, I think.
Oh, recently.
It wasn't that long ago. Yeah,
Yeah. And did you reach out
yeah.
to your city councilman or anything like that?
No, my husband was talking to the guy that takes care of having to have permits and everything, and they were kind of working together about him being able to pay for that permit, but we didn't really talk to anybody else.
Like Duke said, I'm sorry you had to go through all this with her dadgum city. They don't have anything better than to do than get rid of a couple of chickens and no garage sales and well, no pop-up canopies. That's crazy.
Without knowing, what exactly what is legally allowed or whatever, it's easy to just accept it and say that doesn't seem right, but what can I do?
Well, a bunch of people will know about it now, and I'm quite sure that a couple of city councilmen will know about this. So maybe we'll hear back from them. Hint, hint, Chris Smith, and if you're watching, he's a councilman at large. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story too.
Oh,
I really honestly thought Duke was half crazy.
nope.
Well, thank you, Miss Diana, and good luck to you
Thank you
guys.
guys.
All right, have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
It was
Thank
good
you.
talking to you.
Okay, bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.
All right, so Rex, I don't know if it's still up there, but I just wanted to point out, there was a time in this country where it was patriotic to have chickens.
Right. Yeah, it
You
was
know,
considered patriotic.
right
It'll,
here is an ad, and I can't think of the year. Maybe I can get it a little bigger. Uncle Sam expects you to keep hens and raise chickens. And this was during a time of war, and it says, two hens in the backyard for each person in the house will keep a family in fresh eggs. the United States Department of Agriculture. Where have we gone? I mean, now we've got cities, city governments paying people to go out with firearms to eliminate chickens at people's houses.
Well, I could say what I really think, but we're trying to keep this at least somewhat family friendly. Family friendly, I think. Like I said, when you first called me about it, of course, I thought you're crazy or whatever. Just bored and trying to call and spin a pretty good yarn and story with me. But it
I
just
told you.
it's the overreach of government. And look, I thought, well, maybe one of their neighbors reported them or something, or along that lines. But I didn't realize that they had called animal control. I mean, where have we heard about problems with animal control before? Deja vu. But
Exactly.
she called animal control, and then that led to all this other hassle that they got. Way to go, City of Bossier.
Now, wait a minute. On this animal control thing, I want to share something. Sources tell me there's some news out there on the animal control. Now, I don't know. I don't even have a hint that this is accurate or inaccurate, but I'm told that somebody with animal control, possibly in the city of Bossier, has been indicted on criminal charges.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that's accurate. I haven't been able to confirm it. I did a little bit of research and I just got this, so I really don't 100% know, but I've been told that. So there's something
Hmm.
going on with the animal control stuff. And there's a comment from Mark Smith that is really amazing.
Well, let me
And he's
scroll
and
back
he
up.
and he's right. He has a point.
You're talking about the air above your house comment
Yep.
or the other one? Yeah, he is
Yep.
correct.
He
I,
is.
I,
And
well, let me point out that I was correct first because I know
well,
the
you
drone
are.
laws. I know the drone laws, but he is right, and we'll have to give him credit, as
But to his
begrudgingly
but
as that is.
But to his point, he says, ask the city about owning the air above the railroad tracks. Now,
Hmm.
that to me says that Mark Smith knows his stuff. He
Hmm.
knows what he's talking about.
Another clue to the mysterious Mark
but
Smith.
but it begs the question, Mark, if that is true, then what is the problem with keeping Shed Road Crossing open?
Hmm. Very interesting point that you raised there.
I
I'd have to
mean,
go
I
back
know
and.
I know the context of the Benton Road overpass. I get it. But then why, if what you say is correct, and I believe that I believe what you're saying is correct, but why is the same problem not dealt with the way the Benton Road overpass was dealt with? I mean, air is air, right? It ain't changing.
Yeah, well, that is true. Um, but, well, there is a rule. You don't blankety blank with the railroads. But
Gr-
we'll have to
oh,
get into that
Greg
debate
Bell.
again.
Greg Bell, you got to look at Greg Bell's comment.
All right,
He
let's
hit it
find
out.
it.
Everybody pay attention right here to Greg Bell, what he says.
Talking about the service chickens?
You better believe it. He
Let's
found the
see.
solution.
So, well, okay. So let's go off on this tangent for a minute. Let me read his comment for the folks listening to the podcast. Greg Bell says, service chicken. Today, therapy chickens are used around the world to help those in nursing homes improve their mobility and have fun. Residents are more inclined to go outdoors if they can interact with animals when they get there. He is onto something. I have researched this service animal deal and gotten into quite a few arguments and debates with some folks over this. Do you know there's like no training, no certificate that you have to get to declare an animal a service animal? And if you're a store owner, let's say you're a restaurant owner and somebody comes in and brings a service dog in, legally, you can't even ask them if it is a service dog because it violates the Disability Act or whatever it is. So they don't even have to be a true service dog. It can just be a comfort animal.
So you're telling me I can get me a big old fighting rooster and I'm gonna take it around Bossier with me, getting signatures for term limits. And when they come to run me off with my rooster, I'm gonna tell them this
That's
is
your
my
comfort.
service. It's my service
No, no,
rooster.
no. Do even better. It's your comfort rooster, because it's even broader of a deal. I'm not kidding you. It is a
Ye-
comfort rooster.
Somewhere right now tonight, the city attorney and probably the assistant city attorney are sitting there saying they're cussing us, saying
They have
those
gone
jack
off the rails.
those jack wagons are going to have us chasing damn chickens all over Bossier City, and they're going to be service chickens, and we're going to
Yes.
have to go to Benton and fight this.
Yes. It'll be interesting. Wow. Huh. Okay. And to answer Val Baker's question, I guess he meant what's the latest info on animal control? Well, you just heard it. I mean, that was fairly recent, December or whatever she said the time frame was, where they're out there, getting rid of chickens and roosters. But as far as current news, we haven't got anything to
Well,
share really, except the guy may have been indicted or person may have been indicted, correct?
person may have been indicted, and I will say the property that was made its way to the police jury that got shipped off to the city and was identified as being somebody else's property, that property still hasn't been returned, and that's kind of still happening.
Yeah. So nothing yet, but I'm sure we're going to have some information coming up in the future. And our good friend Colonel David Crockett says he wants a squadron of funky chickens. All right. Very interesting story. And again, we appreciate Miss Diana coming on to tell her story. She did great. So we kind of hit the middle first, but what's next?
Well, okay, so we've got our other guests, Jill, to come on and talk about censorship and the big lawsuit. And then we also had a little bit of dialogue. Maybe we prompt Jill to go ahead and sign in, but we can jump off to the high quality H2O and cover that while she's coming into the show.
Well, as a matter of fact, she is in the green room right now.
Oh, she's already there.
Yes,
So
she is ahead of the game.
she is. She's such a high achiever.
I know.
I'm just good grief.
I know. All right, I'm going to click a couple of buttons here and see if I can get her not quite live yet, but get her up in the preview so I can make sure her camera looks good and all that kind of stuff. And if you're ready, Duke, I say we go ahead and bring Jill on and let's get to it.
Oh, well, wait a minute. We were going to show
wait.
the little video that she's in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that. All right. So Jill, bear with us for a second. I'm going to show this little video of you and a lawsuit, and then we'll bring you on the show. So bear with us for just a second. All right. Here we go, Duke. Fire in the hole. Well, here we go.
The government's involvement in big tech censorship is one of the worst civil liberties violations I think this country has ever seen.
When the Biden administration started to censor, you can actually see the impressions fall all the way back down to levels that were even below where I had basically any following.
This was an action of the administrative state rather than the private action of the social media companies.
It's a clear First Amendment violation, and we have to stop it.
If you start messing with the public square and ensuring or trying to decide what's true, and you are undermining the very process, the only process that we have to find truth. I'm on social media because I've always wanted to not just be a scientist, but a scientist that's also able to relate my ideas to the public. March 2020 happened, and I had my own viewpoint as to what was going on when the COVID pandemic hit. What I saw happening was a lot of collective hysteria, overreaction to the data, misunderstandings of the data.
And it was his belief that COVID was not nearly as deadly as people thought, and that the harms of lockdowns and other interventions were greater than the benefits.
I became part of an early group of some of the early folks that were yelling about this. It was clear by 2021 that we were being censored for pushing back on the mainstream narrative.
Shangizi versus HHS is about the government's involvement in big tech censorship. While many people believed for a long time that this was something that the tech companies were doing on their own, it turned out that the Biden administration was involved in coercing the tech companies or directing them to censor people whose views differed from the government's when they voiced them on social media.
What they were telling those third parties is, we don't want people like your clients talking. Shut them up.
On Twitter alone, I have 5 different cases of permanent suspensions.
Under the First Amendment, neither Congress nor the President could do this, and neither can the administrative agencies.
We had to counter the narrative that people were doing this to benefit society. You know, an individual has a right to determine what's best for themselves. The government does not get to make that decision for them.
Jill works for Health Freedom Louisiana. They have been fighting mandates, especially vaccine mandates. Her organization was censored extensively on social media.
We knew. We saw the writing on the wall very, very early on. This was, October of 2020. You could not oppose any kind of government narrative.
Missouri versus Biden is a case brought by the Attorneys General of Missouri and Louisiana along with NCLA. 2 of the plaintiffs are Jay Bhattacharya, an epidemiologist at Stanford, and Martin Kulldorff, who was an epidemiologist at Harvard. They wrote a short treatise in October of 2020 called the Great Barrington Declaration, where they eschewed lockdowns, said that lockdowns were doing more harm than good.
What's striking to me is that despite this diverse background, we've come to an agreement about what the science is telling us. This is a science-based approach.
There was a concerted effort to shut them down, and that effort happened at the behest of the Biden administration.
In between Shangizi and Missouri v. Biden, more information came out about what the government did. It's a constant stream of direction from the government to every single one of these social media platforms.
Facebook, Twitter, Google, LinkedIn were working with the government to decide who to silence, what kind of post to silence, what kind of information to silence. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook and Anthony Fauci were exchanging phone numbers and having phone calls.
Doctor, I strongly agree that we need somewhat of a reset here.
I'd like it to be the case that there's a strong moral slapdown in some sense of the behavior that's been going on.
The culture has moved so far away from free speech that the government felt it could get away with it.
The government cannot use private companies to accomplish what it can't do directly. That's a First Amendment violation.
The governor's not my daddy. The president's not my daddy. They're not here to help me, stay well from a virus. Their job is really to protect my rights.
I'm hoping at some point my voice is able to pierce the envelope that they've kept me in.
Wow.
That's a pretty strong video.
I'm going to say it is too. And Jill, I got to ask you right off the bat. So you're saying John Bell Edwards is not your daddy?
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure my mother's in the comments. She can attest to that as well.
That was a great quote though. Great quote. Great soundbite.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I've affirmed that from the get-go that this has never been the government's job to protect me from a virus, to make sure that I stay well. Their job is literally to protect the general welfare, not individual health. And they have done so much incredible overreach. And now we're finding out that they had help from these social media platforms, colluding to suppress the voices, like myself. I'm the little man in this lawsuit, if you will. But yeah, the information that's coming out of it is kind of shocking.
Now, look, this thing you were going at it from the health freedom angle. That was kind of your place, right?
It initially started from that, but we also started the other grassroots movement called Reopen Louisiana, and that became engaged with the election issue as well. So we were looking at it from every front. We were censored from every angle. We had a Health Freedom Louisiana group on Facebook. We had a public page. We had a Reopen Louisiana public page and Facebook group. Both of those groups were deplatformed at various times. Our public pages were censored. I shared in my declaration for the original lawsuit, the original Missouri, Louisiana v. Biden, before I became a plaintiff in a separate lawsuit. But I wrote in my declaration how our Reopen Louisiana page really grew very, very quickly because reopening Louisiana became an essential message. Very early on in the pandemic, we started Reopen Louisiana in April of 2020. So we knew like very early on that all of this was just, bogus. And really the government was infringing individuals' rights to, not open their business, not go to work, not have an income and provide for their family. So that page grew exponentially quickly. And our first fact check or community standard, whatever it is they want to call it, brought us down from a reach. Our Facebook analytics showed that we were reaching almost 1.4 million people in a month's time. And that first hit, that first community standard that we got on Facebook brought us down to like nothing. Our reach was so minimal. It felt like we were posting in a black hole.
So Jill, look, I know you could run this thing off like a sewing machine. I know, but I want to back us up and slow us down a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to do this, and this is the way I'm going to ask it. Are you a Russian?
No.
Do you think am I a Russian?
No, I don't think you're a Russian either.
Although he is from Houghton, I want to add that in. That's why we
Houghton.
have to slow it down. No offense
Well,
to my Houghton
Rex,
friends.
so most likely you're a Russian.
Well,
one of us has to be a Russian, right?
I don't think I am. I don't think my parents immigrated from Russia, but I'll have to call mom and double check.
Well, I'm making that point, and for everybody watching the show, what you need to understand is all of us lived through COVID. We lived through, okay, we all have to lock down. We all have to wear this mask. We all have to get these jabs. And if we don't all do this, we are, a menace to society, and we're hurting our fellow man. We're evil. We're all these bad things. And all those people that said that, they're nowhere to show us that they're eating their crow today. I just want to point out. But my point is that how easy the slippery slope is that we're all Russians. And as a result, and Jill's not going to focus as much on that, but in this lawsuit, there's a lot more than the violations of, I would say, everyone's health freedom, your right to privacy and or your rights even to choose. How many of your rights were violated here, but how many people were caught up in this political narrative of Russian this, Russian that? It was more than that, wasn't it, Jill? You know what I'm trying to say here.
Well, there was part of the reason that some of these security agencies got involved was the claim that Russians were involved in elections. For example, in 2016, one of the agencies that's involved in the lawsuit is CISA. I don't know exactly how they pronounce that. The Cyber Internet
Security Agency.
Yeah, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That's the one that Jan Easterly is involved with. But that was actually established by President Trump after all of the claims of Russian collusion during the 2016 election, where the Democrats claimed that Russians were involved in the election fraud or whatnot. So that was actually started by President Trump and initiated in 2018 to kind of police the elections to make sure that there wasn't foreign involvement and foreign collusion in affecting the presidential election.
Well, let me chime in here for a second. So I'll say this. I read some stats once. It's been a while back, but there was some Russian involvement in trying to swing an election, or at least, they were able to determine that they came from Russian bot farms and all this. But the amount that they spent on Facebook, if I remember my numbers correctly, and I'm pretty close, was only like $250,000. It was less than way less than $1 million.
That's right, Rex. And that was the point of why I steered us a little bit. And I'm sorry, Jill, because I know you want to just, and you're totally right. I get it. But this is a bigger picture thing than just health freedom, but it's also about it's a lot more than that. So you said that, the Russians spent this little bit amount of money that was inconsequential, and I think even the Mueller report supposedly showed that. But, if let's say we all said, you know what, it was the China virus, and even the Department of Energy said that was correct, even the FBI today said that was correct, and we shared a post to inform the public that it was the China virus. And if I'm a Democrat and I want to kill that, maybe I share a little bit of money to a Russian bot farm. They have one poster, like it and share it, and then the government or a leftist can send a message to Facebook or social media to say, hey, or to the FBI guy, hey, send the social media thing. This is Russian bot activity. And then they would take you, Jill, me, all of us down because all of us are Russians. Right, Jill? Did I enunciate that correctly about how it worked?
Well, I do know that they have released a list of accounts that were censored as part of the 2018 election, and they're incredibly they're not very sophisticated, kind of like what you're saying. They were just kind of set up, I think, for a particular purpose to maybe share, certain posts, and those individuals were, brought down and contacted, if you will, or I don't know what the correct term is, but they were targeted, I think, for censorship.
Okay, so let me ad lib and chime in here a little bit again. So I've said many times that I don't consider it censorship when a private organization, or in this case, platform like Twitter or Facebook, or pick whatever platform you want, wants to suppress certain content. They're a private corporation, although they may be publicly traded or whatever, and they should have the right to do that, I feel, as a capitalist. Now, where I do draw the line, though, is if the government itself is mandating to the private company that you must suppress this speech, so on and so forth. So let me ask you this, Jill, and maybe you were getting to this. In your involvement in this lawsuit, which I think is still ongoing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, is there direct evidence that Biden or part of his administration or the FBI or whatever came in and said, take that content down because, that speech is not something that we want out there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of evidence of pressure from federal agencies, and there's actually, evidence from the president himself saying, that social media, by their lack of censorship, is killing people. Do you guys remember in that press conference where he talked about that? But there is a lot of evidence that these agencies were pressuring social media, especially, there's so much information now about Twitter specifically, since Elon Musk has purchased Twitter and that platform, and he's divulged so many internal communications that even the discovery of our lawsuit did not have access to, that shows communications between federal actors, for lack of a better word, because there's so many. I mean, it spans so many federal agencies, including like the Census Bureau, which seems so incredibly obscure, but even the Census Bureau was involved with it. But there does show some communication that does imply there was a lot of pressure from these federal agencies for these private businesses to act on their behalf.
Okay.
Doesn't I want to jump in here, Rex.
Okay.
So to Rex's point, he says that because Facebook, Twitter, Meta, Google, the whole lot of the stuff, they're private organizations. If they don't like what you're saying, they can do what they want to do. They can cut it all out. But at what point does an issue become a matter of public concern that trumps any individual business or individual person or politician's judgment or preferred ideology? At what point does an issue that's a matter of public concern trump all of that? Isn't that what we're talking about here?
Well, one of my greatest concerns in all of this was the fact that they deplatformed, a sitting president. They took his ability to communicate with the public away from him in a time of what they have deemed a crisis situation with this January 6th, issue, which is a whole other separate issue. But the fact that they were able to interfere with a sitting president's ability to communicate with the American citizens is extremely concerning for me. And the fact that they were able to create a narrative around that incident in particular is extremely concerning. And we also know too, from what we found from the Twitter files, not necessarily our lawsuits discovery, is that these agencies have done the same thing in other countries. They've influenced the narrative going on in these other countries to influence their elections. So I've stated a couple of times. I don't know if this is. I don't know if this is too radical a thought, but I really believe that specifically our 2020 election was a coup. It was a coup from inside our own country. No guns were drawn. But these agencies, CIA and FBI in particular, really played a part in the outcome of the 2020 election.
Right, so let me throw a little curveball in here because I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist. Much like Elon claims to be, although I don't know, some of his actions he may not be an absolutist like he says. But so let me ask you this: you think Edward Snowden is a traitor or a hero?
That's a little controversial too, but
Same principle.
I do believe that what he did was the right thing.
Okay. And same thing with Julian Assange.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Sure. Just want to make sure we're being consistent here. What do you think, Duke?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. But I think that question would have been more appropriate back during the day when they took the actions that they took. That would be, in my opinion, when the gut check for people really was. Today, we can all kind of armchair quarterback. And I'm not saying that about either of y'all, because I feel I know both of y'all. I know where you stand. But the same thing with the people who were standing at the entrance of Sam's. Oh, sir, you can't come in here without your mask on. They didn't no more have any idea what they were trying to tell me than a bat in the moon. But, where are those people today? Those people that were demanding you have your mask on, are they eating their crow? No, they're not eating their crow. And this is what makes me mad. And this is when we started the show. I saw it was on Twitter or Facebook, one of the social media things, that people were today saying that, okay, we shouldn't be saying to the people that were doing those things back then, we should embrace them. We should bring them into the fold. We shouldn't make them eat their crow and make them acknowledge they were wrong. We should just allow them to flow into on our team and China virus. I don't know. I don't know that I can buy that. What do y'all think?
Are you talking about the idea of amnesty for these individuals that acted badly?
Yes, that there are people on the Republican side are saying we should just let these people, we shouldn't hold them accountable. We should just let them flow back in and let bygones be bygones, right?
No. I've had pushback on that too, Duke, because I've shared a graphic before that says no forgiveness. We're never going to forgive. And from my friends within my faith community, they're like, but Jill, you have to forgive. And I'm like, no, not the government. I'm not going to forgive the government. And you can never forget what the government has done over the last 3 years.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you because we challenge everybody here.
Do it.
Fauci?
Sorry? Oh, Fauci?
Doctor? Yeah. You going? What about forgiving that one?
No. I believe in justice too, and justice is a biblical, construct as well. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
a fair trial, and then a speedy execution in that place, and in many other elected officials, not even elected officials, but appointed officials that prolonged this, that denied treatment to individuals, denied the truth to people. I've shared a fantastic article. The headline was "Censorship Kills," the people that were involved in withholding, vital information to individuals that eventually resulted in their death. These people deserve a fair trial, and they deserve a swift justice, and as a result of it.
Well, I can't really disagree with that. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian's point of view because the people at Sam's Club or Walmart or pick your private establishment who wouldn't allow you in without a mask, I see that as no different than a dress code. Okay, now, where I draw the line is if they're operating under a government mandate, which we were, that you can't go shopping. The government is saying that you can't do this without doing this. Now, if people to this day want to require you to wear a mask into their establishment, I don't have a problem with that. Honestly, I've got a couple of clients of mine. They require that I wear a mask. I have the choice of either not getting paid by them or honoring their request and wearing a mask, even though we're not under a government mandate, and doing business with those folks. So I'm going to take a little different tact, and I want to hear what your opinion on that is, Jill.
I'm looking for my popcorn here for somebody's lunch fixing to get ate. Anyway, go ahead, Jill.
I do have a little bit of an opinion on that. Surprise, surprise. But, we have to remember that a mask is not a piece of clothing. It's literally defined by the FDA as a medical device. So these private businesses are actually requiring you to undergo an experimental because
Hold on. Let me stop you right there, though. All right, pause for a second. I'm talking about just even the stupid cloth masks that we know are no good because are ineffective. Because when we go ride four-wheelers in Mena, Arkansas, where it's very dusty, guess what we wear?
wear a mask. Yeah.
Cloth mask to keep the dust. It cakes up on the outside of the mask instead of all over your face. So keeping that in mind, I'm not saying they have to wear a surgeon's mask or an N95. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, and we're still talking about the same thing. Even a cloth mask, the FDA defines it as if it's being used to prevent the spread or transmission of COVID, it's considered a medical device, and it's actually under emergency use authorization, which means it's experimental. So these private businesses that are actually requiring you to wear an experimental medical device over your face to prohibit, transmission of a virus, which under the terms of the EUA, they have to make known to you that the mask will not prevent the transmission of the virus. They're actually taking on a risk. We know that masks not only inhibit your breathing, but they also inhibit part of your peripheral vision. These businesses that are requiring you to wear a mask in their place of business are actually taking on liability by requiring you to undergo an experimental medical intervention to enter their businesses. And they're not aware of that. Really, if you go into their business with a mask on, at their behest, their requirement, if they're making you do that to go into their business, you can sue them if something happens, if you lose consciousness because you're out of breath, or if you trip over something because your vision has been impaired, sue them. Please sue them.
Well, we'll just have to agree to slightly disagree because
Come on, Rex. You're telling me Sam's can say, okay, it's in your medical interest that you go buy a case of laxatives back there. Are you kidding me? Come on.
No, they can't force you to purchase something. No.
Well, you're
because
gonna let
again,
them force you. You're going to let them force you on respiration when you walk in the door? Well, what
No,
about
because they're not
forcing you to
standing
take
there
a
with.
suppository at the door? Good
No,
grief.
you're missing the point. So I'm a
Okay.
capitalist, pure and simple. They're not standing there with a gun at the door forcing me to walk into Sam's. I can choose to go right down the road to Kroger or Brookshire's or wherever I want to go.
But you just
So
have to
if
they're taking on a risk by requiring you to do that by incorrectly claiming that it's just a piece of clothing. It's not. It's not under FDA terms for this specific purpose. Now, if they're telling you to do it to, inhibit dust, if they've got dust, in their
Well,
business or
that
something.
would still be medical.
No, but it's a different
Yeah,
purpose.
but it would still be medical to help prevent my airflow from getting blocked.
For the
That's where
FDA.
I'm saying you have to be careful when you go down that path of encouraging a lawsuit for this. And I'm not disagreeing with you because I don't like the mask either.
No.
yeah,
I won't encourage lawsuits. That's the only way we're going to prevent this. And one of the great things about, well, I say great things. So there's silver linings in all of this, right? Now we are seeing lawsuits. I don't know if you've read one of my recent articles where there have been 4 lawsuits filed in relation to the vaccine mandates. So that's one of the best ways for the market to kind of correct itself around this madness is for some litigation to take place. So I'm hopeful that, what I'm really hopeful is that children are not harmed long term by this. I don't know if you recalled, our Smile project that we put on back in either 21, where we talked about the long-term effects of inhaling those microparticles that are in masks. Again, it's an experimental medical intervention. There's never been any kind of long-term studies on this. What are the ramifications? What are the effects of children inhaling these microparticles for 7 or 8 hours a day while they're in class? Maybe 2-3 years down the line when we have kind of like what we're seeing with the vaccines, all of these harmful effects of it. I'm praying that doesn't happen, but what if we have children that have, lung damage down the road because of it? Mesothelioma comes to mind, inhalation of those type of micro nanoparticles. What is it going to do? And that's the argument we made during the Smile project when we were trying to convince these school superintendents that they were imposing an untested medical intervention on these children, that they are going to be culpable in the long term if these children experience harm down the road. So that's one of the corrective actions, in a free market capitalist society is litigation. One of the things that were denied in the vaccine mandates, we can't sue. We can't sue the vaccine manufacturer. We can't sue the physician or the pharmacist that's administering it. So it removes the market, one of those indicators of safety.
And Jill, I'm sorry to cut you off. Why can we not sue them? Who enabled them to be protected? Who did that?
Well, again, with the COVID vaccines, the PrEP Act was enacted by, originally enacted, but for this emergency, it was enacted by President Trump. So under PrEP, under the PrEP Act.
So wait a minute. So President Trump singularly by himself passed an act and took an action.
No, the act was already in place. That the PrEP, I can't remember what PrEP stands for, Prepared Emergency something Act. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Something that a previous Congress enacted, right?
Yes, already in place. It was established, I think, during anthrax, maybe in the early 2000s, when anthrax was mailed to the Capitol. It's PrEP is for countermeasures to terrorist acts. So if there's a countermeasure to an anthrax, say an anthrax vaccine, of course it would be experimental because it would be rushed and put on the market very quickly. So it's a countermeasures program to any kind of terrorist attack. So that's always kind of left an interesting question in my mind about whether or not they actually deemed this as a terrorist act initially to invoke PrEP. But that's the reason that the vaccines, and actually At the moment, the masks are under that as well. So because they're under emergency use authorization.
All right, so I'm trying to roll down these comments. We're getting a lot of them. So what's the current status of the lawsuit that you're involved in now? Where does it sit?
Well, currently I just received an email from my attorney because, as part of my original declaration with the Missouri v. Biden lawsuit, I was asked to participate in a separate plaintiff lawsuit to give the original lawsuit a little bit of oomph that people were actually injured in it. So we joined with Missouri v. Biden. And I'm again being represented by Janine Eunice that you saw in that video earlier. And currently they're still deposing individuals, but we just got an email asking us to write some more information, basically another declaration to bring in class. So there are other individuals that have been harmed in it. For example, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was named as one of the disinformation dozen, I believe, by the Biden administration. There's some other, Tucker Carlson, there's been discovery noted that the president's administration asked for social media platforms, specifically Facebook, to deplatform a video of Tucker Carlson talking about the safety of the vaccines, Alex Berenson, Naomi Wolf. And President Trump too. So we've been asked to write a statement to give class, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't know what all these legal terms mean. So we have a deadline of Monday that we need to write a statement to show how their voices were also censored on social media. So we have a Monday deadline to show that other individuals were harmed, not just us, to make it a broader lawsuit. So that's my lay interpretation of what we're doing at the moment.
So that almost sounds like we're back full circle to is it a matter of public concern or not? And and it doesn't matter what the subject is whether or not Rex's hat is a better hat than my hat. I mean, if black is more offensive than red, if it's a matter of public concern, the issue of the different colors of the two hats, should there be government censorship or any censorship by companies or not? Should there be any censorship of that discussion? I mean, I can tell you when I was a firefighter, if there was an issue that took place, if I believed it was, and that was it. If I believed as a public servant, if I believed it was a matter of public concern, I could speak to it, and I didn't have to abide by the political rules that said I couldn't say anything to the public. That enabled me to say it. Is that where we're at? I mean, and shouldn't, or am I answering my own question? And is that where we should be? I keep going back to that. I mean, because I every time I'm listening to you talk, that's what I keep coming back to.
Are you asking whether or not the social media platforms have the right to determine what is appropriate to say, or
well, you can clearly read in your lawsuit and all of the Chan, Fauci, you can read all in all of their things, they were actively working to quiet stuff and get it shut down. And if they would, to me, I kept talking about the Russian thing, it seemed like they tried to class a lot of people as Russians. We even had somebody watch this show before accused somebody as being a Russian bot on our show. This man was born here, lived here all his life, and only because he opposed the Ukraine crap. I mean, and people were calling him a Russian. But if the government takes a position that they want to steer something, all they got to do is just send a message. And even if it's a matter of public concern, And in your case, we were talking about COVID, and Rex takes the position that they're a private company. I respect that, and Rex is right. I mean, I agree with capitalism. But I think we come to a point in society when an issue is so important that it is a matter of public concern, everything should be on the table, and we should all be able to use our God-given intelligence to discern what's right and what's wrong. And you know what? If God didn't give us enough intelligence to discern what's right and wrong, maybe he needs to come on down and take us all right now. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think I think we've gotten to a point, and I argued this when back in 21 when Representative Beryl Amade brought her social media free speech bill. That when you're talking about a communication platform as big and as significant as Facebook, when we're talking about billions of users, that it has gotten to the point where it's basically you remember when they broke up Ma Bell when we were kids, when the telephone system became so it almost threatened national security. If that one business came down, communication would come to a screeching halt. And we're at the same point, I think, with Facebook in particular. Twitter, not so much. I don't think it has the depth of users that Facebook does. But when it comes to the point where they can literally interrupt the communication of a national leader, and disrupt, elections like they did, steer this pandemic response in the way that they did, and affect so many people. I think the protections that have been afforded to them under 230, I think need to be looked at a little bit more introspectively and determine whether or not the entire platform needs to be broken up, if you will, a tad bit, in the similar sense that they did to the telephone systems back in, what was that, the 70s, 80s, when they did that?
Well, the difference in Ma Bell and the telephone systems is Ma Bell owned the actual copper in the ground. And so that's the difference. So the way the internet works, it doesn't matter who owns the copper in the ground anymore. So that's the key difference there. But I agree with you that it's kind of ironic that the 230 protections are afforded because they're not supposed to editorialize. But they were editorializing and selectively publishing content based on government directives and mandates, as we're learning through lawsuits and such as yours and all that you're involved with.
Right, for sure. And there was really, I'm going to look for it real quickly, but there was a very concerning statement by Jan Easterly of CISA, if I'm saying that correctly, the head of the CISA, Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, where she deemed the content that you and I put out on social media as infrastructure. Cognitive infrastructure. So what she really wanted to control was our thoughts that were going out through social media interactions. She called it cognitive infrastructure, in the same way that the federal government does have regulation over federal roads and that infrastructure. She sees this as cognitive infrastructure that the government needs to regulate as well. That's a terrifying thought, that the government should. It's 1984. It's so incredibly Orwellian. It just blows my mind that they're literally talking about our thoughts as cognitive infrastructure that needs to be regulated from the federal government.
Well, it's always a fine line because we don't have absolute free speech in this country, nowhere near it. I mean, it's the old saying of yell, fire in a movie theater, or not that I'm advocating for this, but, threaten government officials or something like that, and you'll discover how quickly you don't have free speech in this country. So it's always a fine line. I don't agree with the thought police either, at all.
Well,
and like I said before, I consider myself an absolutist with free speech, but then again, I mean, I even agree. Okay, somebody can yell fire in a movie theater, but there are going to be legal consequences for that. They can say it, but there's going to be consequences for that if they cause panic and a riot.
Exactly. You know, the government actually limits our speech on very few areas, pornography being one, threats of violence, threats of not insurrection, but stirring up a mob, if you will. But individually, you know, we do have the freedom to say whatever we want to, but we also have to suffer the consequences of that language that we put out there. So I think that we kind of regulate ourselves if we're knowledgeable enough and have enough wisdom to watch what we say. But as far as free speech, you know, the government can't compel us to say something, and they can't also have a list of things that we cannot say. And that's one of the things that we saw during the COVID. The last 3 years, the COVID era, if you want to call it that. But that's what we saw. We saw a list. They literally have a list of misinformation and disinformation. If they saw it, it was censored. So that's a blatant violation of the First Amendment, and that's what we saw with the collusion with these social media platforms.
So let me go down that rabbit hole a little bit further, because not that I disbelieve you, I absolutely believe you that all this was going on. But when you say they, that means somebody had to generate this list and hand it out to so and Betty Sue at, you know, Twitter and at Facebook or whatever. Who is the they? Was Biden himself, or Trump for that matter, sitting there and coming up with this list? Do we have any indication of who that was?
Yeah, well, from the discovery that we've seen, of course, Jen Easterly from CISA was heavily involved in that, along with there's a private collaboration with Stanford University's. Stanford had this disinformation center as well. The FBI had a list of information that they were steering towards these social media platforms. So yeah, there's a lot of actors that actors being the word for individuals that work for the federal government that were involved with sending lists of things to social media platforms, and the social media platforms would kind of check it against their criteria to see if it conformed, if it didn't conform. But one of the really interesting Twitter files to go back and read is the incidents from January 6th, about what happened the day of January 6th and the days after, when they were determining whether or not to bring down President Trump off of Twitter. So because it didn't actually comply with their standards for deplatforming an individual. So it's an interesting back and forth between individuals that worked at Twitter trying to determine how they could do it by the standards that they had already set.
Yeah, it's a big gray area, and like I said, it's a fine line, because who is the arbiter of what is dangerous and what is not? I mean, we have our thoughts and feelings on what is actually dangerous and not. And personally, I don't think anything Trump said, you know, for the
No.
January 6th deal was dangerous. But my point of it is,
Oh, wait a minute. You can't say that.
well,
You
yeah,
can't.
we'll
You
probably
can't.
get cut off from Facebook
You
right
can't
now.
say
But
that. We
well,
can't even have this discussion. You can't even talk about it. The
and
mind police are out there. See, they're cutting Jill.
but the difference is, Duke, I know how to go to other platforms if Facebook decides to cut us off. See, that's the key difference. But back to my original point is that, you know, who determines what the standard is? And that's a dangerous road right there. Whether you're on the right, the left, the middle, in between, it doesn't matter. When one party's in power, it's going to be this standard. When another party's in power, they're going to try to shift it to this standard. And somewhere in the middle is where it actually needs to be.
Totally.
I would contend that the Russians are in charge.
Now the Russians. Putin did it.
Well, I'm just saying, all they have to do is put a bot to say, hey, the Second Amendment is a part of the Constitution. And guess what? Social media will say, hey, or the FBI will say, hey, the Russians are botting that the Second Amendment is part of the Constitution. And then, you know what? The next thing you know, we've got social media taking down pro Second Amendment stuff that it's a part of the Constitution, and bam, we got revisionist history. What's that terminology she used a while ago? I mean, it's not nothing we said in Holden. Cognitive infrastructure. That's cognitive infrastructure. We can change it.
I was going to go back to the governor and the president's not her daddy, but sorry, wrong comment.
He's not.
Okay. So
108.
Well, the only other. Well, I'm sorry. There was only one other place I was going to go with all of this discussion, but we see. I think we got Jill out of her. She has her normal can thing, but I think we got her off track a little bit, Rex.
Well, you started it. It was that whole Houghton thing, you know.
But it was intentional. I mean, I did it intentionally.
And then I threw her for a pretty good curveball right there, being the contrarian. So you know.
The only thing I was, because next week we got Brandon Trosclair going to come on the show, and so I was going to prod her a little bit on that direction, but I don't know how to prod her and what she would want to say regarding that subject. She may not even want to talk about Kyle Ardoin or Brandon Trosclair or the Secretary of State or elections in Louisiana, but the floor is open if she wants to, and how that pertains to this lawsuit.
Well, there's been a little bit of chatter about it, but there's no proof that any state officials and I've tried, not from Kyle Ardoin or anything, but there has been chatter as part of our discovery that state actors had access to these portals. So I've done a public records request to see if Louisiana Department of Health and any of their executive members, executive leadership staff has communicated through a certain email address, and I got nothing responsive to my request. And I know something similar has happened to it's not my public records request that I did, so I hate to speak to it, but I don't think anything has been gained on that as well. But so no, I really don't have anything to say about. I know that the National Association of Secretaries of States had access to provide information. I've seen a document that Secretary Ardoin has presented during that time that showed that he was looking for individuals that were portraying themselves to be secretaries of state. And once again, the CISA was actually established by President Trump. So I think they've kind of corrupted it to use it for their own purposes. So originally it was established to ensure that the elections were safe and secure. And so I know from the document that I've seen that the Secretary of our Secretary of State, Kyle Ardoin, has put out, that he was intentionally looking for kind of corrupted accounts that portrayed themselves to be the Secretary of State. So anyway, that's basically all I have on that topic. I know it's a hot button issue, but I tend to focus on the health freedom side of things. As far
well, let me stop you, and
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a straightforward question: yes or no.
Okay.
With your lawsuit, has there been any discovery implicating the Secretary of State in any, communication of censorship of people on social media, to your knowledge?
No, but they're not looking for they're not looking at states. They're looking at the federal government and that their part in this. I just know that there's that from individuals in the state, there's been a public records request, and they haven't, from what I've gathered, they haven't been able to ascertain anything.
And I'm sorry to put you in a box, but because I know health freedom is your deal, but when you read, and very few people are going to take the time to go read all of the interrogatories. They're not going to read everything. I mean, but when you read all of this, there's more than just health freedom in all of this case. There's so much more.
And like I said, I truly, truly believe that the 2020 election was a coup, but it was orchestrated not at the state level. It was orchestrated in the federal government by actors within the FBI and the CIA. So, and by the way, I am of sound mind. I have to harm myself. So, but they're not looking, they're not deposing, and they're not searching discovery for individuals within the state. They're looking at federal government actors as part of my lawsuit.
Well, very interesting discussion, no doubt.
Mhm.
And you're always full of lots of information and interesting stuff at that, Jill.
Thank you. Well, I have been telling people ever since I hopped on your show back in December that I'm Duke's favorite guest.
Absolutely, you without a doubt are. I mean, when you came on the show the first time, I mean, I got to tell you, we got so many positive comments about your commentary and your speaking. I mean, hey, you could be on Fox News soon. I mean, as a regular co-host, you really should because you. I don't know.
Oh, no,
I can't compliment you enough. I'm sorry.
Duke, I really appreciate that.
Well,
And
you
when
know your stuff, and I'm not just trying to make your head big, but you know your stuff, and God knows in today's times we need people who are knowledgeable on the subject matter to speak intelligently and tell the truth, and you're doing both, and people need that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree. Not your truth, not Duke's truth, not my truth, the truth. That's it.
Yep.
I try. I really, really do. So thank you guys. I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that we have to really guard against, because the issue of health freedom is such an electric topic. It emits like an emotional response from people, especially when we get into the discussion on vaccines. So we try our best to act with integrity, to not say anything that we cannot support with data. So I'm extremely careful about what I say, and especially what I put on paper in regards to, our communication with the legislature, communications with Louisiana Department of Health and the Department of Education. So I try my best, because I know I'm under a microscope, to be as correct and succinct as possible. So I appreciate your kind remarks. It means a lot.
All right. Well, we'll be glad to have you back on just as soon as, well, I don't know, you're involved in another lawsuit or something else comes up.
We did just put out another letter. Do you mind if I share with you what we just sent?
Oh,
Department
absolutely.
Great. So we just sent a letter to the Louisiana Department of Health last week. We've been working with an attorney trying to get a cease and desist submitted, but we're working in good faith, and we send a letter in good faith, letting the Louisiana Department of Health know. We send it directly to the Secretary of Health, Dr. Courtney Phillips. Of course, we CC'd the Governor's Executive Council, and Representative Larry Bagley, who's Chair of Health and Welfare on the House side, Senator Fred Mills, who's Chair of Health and Welfare on the Senate side. And we just informed them that the Louisiana Department of Health is violating the terms of the EUA and all of their descriptive material in regards to the COVID vaccinations. And they have been for the last, 2+ years. So the terms of the EUA requires that they disclose that the products, the drugs, the vaccines are under emergency use authorization, and none of their descriptive material you'll see on social media, none of the posters that they supply to all the hospitals and the pharmacies, none of those printed materials they provide to institutions across the state ascribe to the necessary language that's required under the terms of the EUA. So we've asked them to bring all of that material down, to contact all of those agencies that are using their printed material, and to make a public declaration that the information that they've been putting out is incorrect. So we'll see out.
Way to go.
Yeah, that's a monumental task just trying to get them to follow that.
Right, right. So we may be fundraising for an attorney if they do what we. So I may be coming back on to plead for money from your viewers in the very near future.
Well, in the hazmat world, there's a thing that's called time, distance, and shielding. And distance, I don't think that's going to work. Shielding, that hasn't worked like masks. But time, I actually think time is going to be on our side because we've got a governor's race coming up. And I got a sneaking suspicion time is going to end up working in our favors on this.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And you've asked me once before, Duke. I think it was you that asked me about, my opinion on the governor's race and Jeff Landry in particular as a gubernatorial candidate. And I can't speak highly enough of that man and his Solicitor General Liz Muriel, who is running for Attorney General in his place. So they have done us such a tremendous favor by acting on our behalf as citizens of the state, and they've really been the only.
Did they do it because they believed it, or did they just do it for political brownie points? I want to
No,
know.
no, they did it when it was extremely unpopular. The press has never been on Jeff Landry's side. The press hates Jeff Landry, and he made some really unpopular moves very early on. He supported the use of ivermectin. I sat in on a meeting. I think it was in August of 21 when he was getting extremely loud, for lack of a better word, with members of the legislature that were on the other end of a speakerphone telling them that they needed to sign that petition, that they knew he'd already told them what they needed to do to get this state open and running again. Leadership within the state legislature failed repeatedly to sign that petition to open up the state. I mean, look at Florida. Florida doesn't have a Bring Back Florida campaign. They're forging ahead. Their economy is booming. Property value in Florida is astronomical because Florida is free. And here we are over in Louisiana, still bringing back Louisiana. And part of it is because our legislature sat on their hinds for 2 years and didn't do anything. They never acted. When Jeff Landry sat in there that first year and was telling them exactly what they needed to do, and they didn't do it. So yeah, I've seen him in action. Liz Muriel is the one that invited me to be a participant in Missouri v. Biden, myself and my co-director Fiorella on behalf of Health Freedom Louisiana. I made a rant one day on Twitter saying, the cowards that act in as school superintendents, making Head Start students as young as 2 to mask. All these, cowardly superintendents had to do was just say no. And the next thing I know, she's commenting on my Twitter feed saying, if you're a member, if you're a participant in Head Start, contact the Attorney General's office. And then the next week she's suing the federal government on behalf of these people within the Head Start program. So these people have been fighting for us from the very beginning. And of course, too, I'm so thankful for Liz Muriel, our Solicitor General running for Attorney General, because she spoke out when her son was vaccine injured from the COVID vaccine. She came down from her office and testified in a hearing when she was listening to Louisiana Department of Health representatives lie to a legislative committee. So yeah, I'm extremely thankful for those two people. They have been the only watchmen on the wall and as part of our state government, and the only thing that really kind of kept us from going into like communistic society, when Governor Edwards was ready and willing to impose all kinds of impositions in regards to the vaccines. We saw it happen down in New Orleans with the vaccine passports. He would have had free reign if it wasn't for Jeff Landry and Liz Muriel.
Well, that is great to hear. I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to hear it from somebody who was in the trenches with them. And Liz Morrell has committed to come on the show, and as well as Jeff. But we really want to get Liz on because I haven't never had the pleasure, and I don't think Rex has either, of meeting her and really having a discussion with her. And I think she's she's probably a pretty smart cookie, isn't she?
She is, oh my gosh, she is incredible. I actually saw her yesterday. She spoke at the Reston Women's Republican Luncheon, and I was invited to come listen from a member. And she's so incredibly impressive. Hearing her CV, if you will, she taught law school at LSU. She's clerked for all these in various appellate courts. She just has. Of course, she worked as Governor Jindal's executive counsel for a brief time. So her resume is, just spectacular. The woman can't do anything wrong. She's, fought several times in front of the Supreme Court. So anyway, I just can't speak highly enough about Liz. I think the world of her.
Awesome.
Well, Mr. Lowry, any more
Nope.
questions for?
As a good friend of mine who's a colonel says, we have abused Jill's time tonight enough already.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me on. You know, I love to talk. So.
Well, as usual, it was entertaining and informative at the same time, and so yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on and taking a few off the wall questions. That was good.
Sure, my pleasure. Anytime. I'm used to your contrariness, Rex. So
I got to keep Duke in check every now and then. So
right. So yes, I'll let you know if we get a response from Louisiana Department of Health, if that's okay.
Sounds good. We'll look forward to it, Jill. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye. I'm telling you, I think she might be the smartest guest
She
always
knows her stuff, is on point, and speaks really well. I mean,
I would love to see her debate. I mean, like some of the people that come on our show, I would.
Yeah.
She'd chew them up and spit them out.
I think you are correct. Okay, so what else do we have to talk about this evening? The high quality, there's not much to the H2O workshop, but let's see, they're having that thing, Phyllis sent the announcement around, I think it's Thursday. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. You're talking about at Bossier City, right?
Yeah, they're having the workshop.
Yes.
Since Queen David let his mouth overload his rear end, as my grandmother used to say, and spouted off all that stuff that he did at the city council meeting, they're having to actually fill in the gaps and have a workshop about this water deal.
Well,
with the Shreveport-Bossier Port Commission.
I've had a little bit of time to think about all that, and I've come to quite a few questions that
Imagine that.
make me, that just I've thought about it a little bit more, and it's kind of eating at me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have they gotten approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to, bore pipelines under the river?
I have no idea. Probably not yet. They haven't discussed it at the meetings, but maybe they don't have to discuss that kind of stuff. But you would think they'd have Ruttenbuck get up there and give them a, status of it.
Well, if they haven't gotten approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to even do a project, why is the city of Bossier even taking up an issue on voting to support a contract when they don't even have approval? I don't know. It kind of eats at me a little bit. And then, I think
the whole chicken and egg thing.
I think since that last show, we've had some commentary because I think I quoted the fact that the director may have had like a 6-figure salary or something to that effect, and somebody sent us.
We had let's see. Let me bring up the employee salaries real quick.
Yeah, said we needed to highlight for the public, the salaries of the Port Commission.
Yeah, so let me do that. Hold on a second. Let me switch screens here. Let's see. We don't need that screen. Hold on just a second. I gotta get ready here. Okay. And let me drag this over there, and then let me hit this button, and it'll show up on the screen. There we go. Okay. And so for those that are listening to the podcast, in the audio version, so we're showing the Caddo Bossier Parish's Port Commission employees' salaries as posted. And some of them have some pretty decent salaries here. We're looking at Danny Malone. He's general counsel. He's making over 300 grand a year. Let's see who else is up there. Eric England. He's the executive port director. $370,000 a year. Gloria
Okay,
Washington.
so I'll admit I was wrong. I said he was making 400. It's actually only 370. But I'll bet
If you
you he's
round
got
up.
I'll bet he's got a take-home car, and I'll bet it's a Tahoe, so that'll put
Right.
him over 400.
Yeah, and that's just for one employee. Like I said, you've got where's the girl that's head of HR or whatever? She's making Gloria Washington, head of HR, director of finance and HR. She's making over $200,000 a year. I mean, so some of these employees are getting paid pretty good. Now, also to be fair, I mean, we're definitely biased on the show, but we try to be fair where we can. I'm now showing, for those of you listening, the Port Commission members' compensation for Bill Altimus, Walt Bigby, Sam Gregorio, so on and so forth. They are all showing $0 for compensation for the length of their service.
Look, there's Mark Smith. I mean, never mind. Sorry. Apologize.
All right. So, I will be fair to them. The commission members are not being directly compensated from the Port Commission. Let's just put it that way. Okay. But the employees, those are high dollar positions.
I'm already getting secret squirrel text messages.
I heard the little ding, some dingage going on.
It says that's just the base salary.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's others that go with it.
And I don't know the acronym. I'm sorry. I'll plead my ignorance. Check the CAFR, which also shows benefits.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't have time to dig that up, but that is a good idea. Also, so the workshop for the city, Phyllis sent the notice around. The workshop is Thursday, which is March the 2nd. This coming up Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Now, Phyllis checked with Darby, and they're supposed to stream this on their YouTube channel, which is, of course, embedded on their website. They're not supposed to put it out to the Suddenlink channel or whatever else, but they're supposed to stream this Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m.
Well, aren't y'all's offices together? I mean, come on. So, I did want to share something else. Somebody else sent another message, and I think I need to analyze this a little bit more. There's a police jury meeting, either tomorrow or Thursday, and there's a little bit of movement there, and there's something about Butch Ford that's going to be going on or has gone on or whatever. But I don't have all the information yet. I'm not prepared to talk about that, but.
Well, like he stubbed his toe or like something really important?
In regards to, him being able to legally serve as the parish administrator, there's a little bit of information out there, the same as we got a little tip about First Church and a little bit of legal activity in the court this past week. But apparently it was a nothing burger because the best I can discern is that they basically said, hey, we're going to just wait on the Second Circuit to make a ruling on a particular issue that would end up applying to the issue that they were discussing this past week. I don't know.
In other words, they're going to wait it out, keep operating illegally, because it would literally take a lawsuit filed by a citizen or something like that to actually get this settled beforehand. That's what it boils down to. It's like with the mask mandate. Well, it's like the mask mandates and all that. To get anything done about it, I did make a little issue of filing lawsuits, but Jill was correct. the only way to solve this is you have to file a lawsuit. The only way to solve this Butch Ford problem, well, you got to file a lawsuit against them because they're not going to do the correct thing themselves.
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think you've got maybe some, I mean, look, one thing I will say, I don't think that all the people up there in Benton are dumb. I don't think that at all. Wiley, I think that
Yeah.
for sure. But I don't think they're dumb.
Like weasels.
Well, I'm not going to describe that, but
I
as
wouldn't
far
call
as
them wily like a fox. Maybe wily like Wiley the coyote or a weasel. But yeah, I
Well,
agree. They're not stupid.
I think they're kicking the can on the first church thing to the Second Circuit. They're throwing it out there to the Second Circuit to make Thompson and or whoever or Jeff Cox make them try to make a decision on the deal so that they ain't got to make it in Benton.
Right.
It's kind of a political hot potato there for a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's got to be uncomfortable.
That is, but again, circling back to the whole Butch Ford thing and all that, they just keep on operating, act like they're nothing's wrong, everything's okay.
No, nothing's wrong. I mean,
everything's a-okay.
It's all okay. Just y'all spend more money. Just keep paying your taxes. Don't question nothing. Y'all sit at home. Let a few jerks or jackwagons like us talk about people, make them mad at us. And all that. We'll do it.
Meanwhile, they keep laughing all the way to the bank.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty arrogant to think those guys would waste their time watching your show and comment. Pretty arrogant to think those guys would watch.
He's got
your
a
show
point, except that it's because I don't think that Philip Rogers or Juliana is sitting there watching the show, but they do have people advise them on the show. We know that.
Did he just say you were arrogant? Did he just say you? He said you were arrogant.
Yeah, I am arrogant. I mean, you can ask my mother. I've been arrogant since I was 5 years old and could talk. Before then, I don't know. I'm arrogant and conceited.
You and the peas, but you don't bring a rifle to kill chickens.
No, I bring a shotgun or just wring their necks. But
that's what I'm saying. Good grief! Who needs a rifle or a shotgun to kill a chicken?
Yeah.
See that you are arrogant. Mark Smith's right. You are arrogant.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Compliment us again, Mark Smith. That's awesome. Appreciate it.
I like it. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, enough of our arrogance.
Yep, enough arrogance for one night. Hey, next week, I can tell you already, it's going to be Bossier City and water and sewer, $30 million, more money.
Water everywhere, nary a drop to drink or something like that.
And Brandon Trosclair, the guy.
We do have another guest scheduled.
That's right. Brandon Trosclair, who is going to be running for Secretary of State against Kyle Ardoin. He's scheduled to come on the show, and he's going to talk about why he's running. And, I presume he's going to tell us what some of the mistakes that have been made and are being made.
Now, that's the guy that's supposed to get us cut off of social media, right?
Nope. That's not the guy.
Okay. We got another guy lined up for that.
That's another guy lined up. And Liz Morrell, she is in the hopper to come on the show. Never met her, never talked to her, but she talked to one of her contacts, and she is going to come on the show. I really look forward to having that conversation with her because I think she has been a lot of the muscle behind Jeff Landry over the years. And I think that's really going to be interesting. I don't know how down, she may not be down to earth. She may be dry as a bone, but we'll see.
Whatever. Everybody tolerates us every Tuesday night. So,
but no matter what, we always got Mark Smith to freshen up the show.
Remind us of our arrogance.
He was talking about you. He wasn't talking about me.
Oh, yeah, I know. But I mean, he's got to come up with a better compliment than that. I get that all the time. Anyway. Okay. Let's sign off of here. And let's see. I'm going to get the podcast ready. So we're releasing that. Oh, wanted to remind everybody real quick. We are streaming. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on Facebook. Those of you watching on YouTube, Twitter doesn't do show notifications, but we're just there. So you just have to follow us on Twitter. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I usually get that ready right after this show, and so it's usually up there within an hour or two. So you can find us on pretty much any of those platforms, and if we get cut off there, well, we'll do something else. We'll just stream straight to our website. All right.
Go smoke one, Mark Smith.
Yeah. All right.
Have a good night, folks.
See ya.
Good night.